What's going on, guys? Today I'm reviewing the movie Sinners. I know, guys, you guys have heard everything that people have said about it, but I guarantee you that I'm going to bring up a couple points I don't really hear talked about that much about the movie that I think, unfortunately, bring down a slight peg. But spoiler, I still think the movie is amazing. Like pretty much everybody else, it was phenomenal. I enjoyed my time with it. So before we get into all the details, let's just let's just dive into what the movie's about. The movie Sinners follows, I would say, truly three main characters. You have the brothers, Smoke and Stack, twin brothers played by Michael B. Jordan. They also have Sammy, their little cousin, right? And it's interesting because I thought the movie was only going to be like primarily about the two brothers, but Sammy is kind of an equally like important part of the story as well. He's a younger cousin that plays the blues with amazing talent. It's just so beautifully played that like they have to have him for their juke joint, which they're opening up to try to get some revenue after leaving their gang activity in Chicago, specifically leaving gang activity in Chicago. They still have gang activity, just not in Chicago. But they're going to bring about this juke joint. They buy the property from a very, well, let's say a guy who probably has ill intentions for them, definitely has ill intentions for them later on. But they buy the property, they gather all their closest friends and family, and they open up the juke joint. And it's a pretty big turnout, right? And the whole first half of the movie is essentially that. They are building up these characters, the love interest of Smoke and Stack, the younger cousin Sammy, who plays the blues amazingly, and a couple other key characters that are going to help out with the juke joint that night, right? That is effectively the first half of the movie, sprinkling in a little bit of a primary vampire who is collecting a couple vampires here and there, right? He kills a couple people who kind of join his posse, but it's a pretty small numbers. For the first half of the movie, he basically goes from like 1 to I think like 3 to 4 vampires in total, including the main vampire. I say main vampire because honestly, I don't remember his name. I could have looked it up, but I feel like it's more important for me to not remember his name for some of my gripes with the movie. I will say this, guys, it's in the title, but I'm going to say it again. This is a spoiler review. So from here on out, it's pretty deep spoilers. Everything else so far isn't really much of a spoiler, but from here on out, we're going to begin to spoilers about what I loved about the movie and then what my gripes are. So let's continue. Okay, what I loved about the movie. The same things that everybody has loved about the movie, right? The themes, the performances, whether it's acting or singing, the lighting, the sound design, so much of the complicated nature, some of the shots and things they do. So much of that stuff is flawless. The performance of Michael B. Jordan, the actor who plays Sammy, I should probably look that up. I'll put his name down here so that you guys can have that name because I think he's going to blow up. He needs to. He did a phenomenal job. And this was like his first acting credit, I believe. So we got to give him his credit. But so many of the performances were so great and so nuanced, especially just Michael B. Jordan as Smoke and Stack, just giving those subtle differences between them, their like eccentric nature. Amazing, right? And yeah, I can't say enough about it, right? That all was phenomenal. You've heard that in other reviews. I'm not going to beat that dead horse. So kind of going into like the second half of the movie-ish, Mary, the love interest of Stack, I had to dedicate a lot of time to remembering which love interest belonged to which brother, or was connected to. And she gets bit by the vampires and she finds her way back into the juke joint eventually after being invited in. And she kills Stack as well after they kind of do a little bit of lovemaking, right? From here on, I think it was where some of my disappointment started to come in, which is some of the story. Part of it is because they showed Stack becoming a vampire months ago in one of the trailers, in like the second trailer to drop. I was very disappointed by that because I was like, man, like that feels like something I would have wanted to have seen just as the story unfolded, which led me to believe like, I don't know, Ryan Coogler is just so good at storytelling. I have to believe that if they're willing to show that there's got to be some deeper level to this, right? There has to be like some sort of plot twist or some sort of deeper level to the narrative that's going to flip everything on its head for us or something. But I think I was just lamenting the fact that they showed that very early in trailers. And that wasn't I guess I'll get into why that like bothered me. As you go, I feel like the plot has a little bit of like a stalemate. The vampires eventually are outside a lot of the favorite cast and characters are bitten. Smoke, Cornbread, Mary. I'm pretty certain maybe the Asian guy, I forget his name, but the husband of the woman is out and bitten, right? And that's almost half the people that we came to care about, right? At about, you know, 2/3 ish of the movie, right? But once they get bitten, it's almost like they aren't even a part of the movie. Don't get me wrong, they're still there. They have scenes, but I think this movie did a great job of setting up characters. They gave them a great beginning. I think a lot of characters missed their middle. Some sort of middle development for the characters. It seemed like, and it makes sense, like once they become a vampire, it's like they're a vampire, right? Maybe if they didn't kill off so many of the main cast of characters, which, again, the spoilers, I'm going to go right into it. The only two characters that survived the night from being vampires is Smoke and Sammy. That's it. There's at least like 8 characters that they wanted us to care about. 2 of them were love interests of Smoke and Stack. Stack himself. You had Cornbread. You have what's his name? Delroy. I gotta look this up. That's gonna bother me if I don't. Delta Slim, played by Delroy Lindo. I know this guy from movies, but I forget his name. But yeah, Delta Slim. We lost his character. Who else? All right. I'm in IMDb. Here we go. We lost Stack. We lost 2 of the Chows. Delta Slim. That's 4. We lost Mary. That's 5. We lost Cornbread. That's 6. We lost Annie. That's 7. And then there was another black girl, the love interest of Sammy, that we lost. So that was 8 people that we lost of like 10 that we started to care about, right? We lose them because I think this is probably the dumbest part of the movie. As like the one, not like even the dumb, this is like the one dumb part, was that the vampires were singing a song outside that like antagonized Mrs. Chow. And I think she just thought that they were going to go after her daughter, who was in town. And to me, I'm like, well, they're clearly still outside because they're singing the song, right? So why would we do anything? And she's like, come on in, you motherfuckers. So then like 50 vampires come in. I'm like, well, there's only like 5 of us in this in this juke joint. There's no way one of these guys are effectively stronger than us and invulnerable more or less to damage unless you get a stake through the heart, right? Because of that, it's like that scene, and this is like at basically the end of the movie. But you know, they knock off Delta Slim, Mrs. Chow, Anne, what was her name? Smoke's love interest. They knocked off a lot of people. And I don't know, I'm kind of bouncing around. But I'm not a big fan of movies that will, and not even just that they make you care about characters and then kill them off. I think it kind of depends on like how they do it. And I don't think they did it well here, because at the end of the movie, when the sun rises and a lot of these vampires die, it just feels a little unceremonious. It felt a little like a lot of people that were built up extremely well in the first half of the movie just become like faceless, nameless, and then just burn up with the group of the other background vampires. You know, there's not any sort of like last real moments with most of them. More on that later. In one of the endings, we get a little nugget of information. Smoke's love interest, Annie, dies technically before becoming a vampire. Sammy's love interest just dies. Delta Slim, Cornbread, a lot of these characters just straight up die, and we just don't get much from them after a certain while, right? Again, this is all loosely like in the second half of the movie. The first half, perfect, beautifully built up. I feel like a lot of the characters didn't get the ending that they deserved based on all the buildup of their characters, right? And all of the attention to detail for them. Delta Slim, had a line like, oh, I'm going to like, me and the devil have been like acquainted for a long time. Before he gets to you guys, he has to go through me. And that kind of happened. He cut his own like vein and let the vampires come to him. I thought he was gonna have like a bomb or something, not literal, just a grenade, but I thought like a Molotov cocktail or something to try to like take them down with him. They just started eating into him. Like he just kind of let him just tear them apart, just distracted them for like 15 seconds. That last scene where Mrs. Chow just invites all the vampires in, I think that's where a lot of things kind of went a little wrong for me. It just didn't make sense to me from an intelligent storytelling perspective. I get her motivation, but it just felt kind of like weak. Like the story was at a stalemate of vampires are outside, we're inside, we could just wait it out. Obviously, that wouldn't make for a good movie. Like, this is probably better than that stalemate. But I thought like maybe just one of them was going to do something a little bit more. If they would have actually had her daughter and then said like, hey, we're going to turn her into a vampire or whatever, then I could halfway understand. But her daughter was all the way in town. Anyways, I'm getting too caught up on that. The reason why I don't think I like that so much is because that was the gateway for ending a lot of characters' stories very abruptly. She tried to throw like a Molotov cocktail or something, like set herself on fire practically. So she was just like angry, screaming because they threatened her daughter. It was just killing one vampire while she was just on fire. Like that felt like a very unsatisfying end for Mrs. Chow. And just that whole moment, I thought they were going to build them up more. And all that to say, I think what this movie kind of missed for me was building up these characters in like the sort of like the middle, I'll say like the middle of the movie. I'll say starting after like that sort of halfway point. And I'll say this, I love the movie so much though that I think they could have easily added in like 20 more minutes and I would have been fine with it. And they could have used that to just pad out some of the bond of these characters during the fight with the vampires, right? Like I think that the fight with the vampires should have had like another stage to it. Not just, okay, we kind of learn what the vampires are, what they're doing, and then like, oh, we're inviting them all in to fight, and then the sun rises. It felt kind of like 0 to 100. They were dealing with one at a time, like whether it was Mary, shot her up, she ran outside. Stack threw some holy water or something on him, garlic water. He ran outside. Cornbread's like, hey, give me my money. Shoot him. He leaves. And then went from just dealing with one vampire at a time for the most part to dealing with like 50 of them, right? I think I would have liked a scene where they had like at least like one like fight with the vampires, the group, where they kind of bond more and it's just like a bit more even, 4, 5, 6 vampires with like 4, 5, 6 of like the humans, and they best them. You know what I mean? Maybe with a casualty, but generally speaking, they best them. I think the other gripe with the movie that I had, the main motivation of the main vampire guy. I keep saying main vampire guy because I really don't remember his name. It didn't really feel like it was pronounced enough. This guy seemed like he was effectively not literally Dracula, but like he was important. Like he was the head of the group. It wasn't just that there was a group of vampires. All the vampires they see on screen started from him, and he seemed pretty cunning and like he was like the head honcho and that he has been around the block for a minute, right? They do tell you effectively what he wants. He wants Sammy, the little cousin, the blues player, because of his songs and his stories. His music draws that vampire to the juke joint. I think that's cool. I feel like there's a lot of stories like from the South, maybe not a lot, but that story of like, what is like the boy with like the violin or like the guitar or whatever that has to play against like the devil. I may have butchered that story synopsis or whatever, but there's a story like that. And I thought that they were doing like a riff off of that, right? You have like a boy with like a guitar and then this sort of devilish like character. And like they have this sort of narrative together. Maybe like one has to outplay the other. Not literally for this movie, but I forget how the actual story itself goes. I should look that up. But regardless, in the theater, as I was watching it, I thought that that's kind of what they were building towards. But it just kind of says it like, oh, your story, like your songs brought us here. I want to turn you to a vampire so we can have your stories so I can like free my soul or bring back like his ancestors, not ancestors. It was a lot. No, effectively Sammy's music had the power to make it feel as though the ancestors or even those of your predecessors, no, that's not the right word, your descendants, right, were all in one place at the same time. The music could conjure the spirits of the past and the future, and the vampire wanted that power from Sammy effectively. When he would turn people to a vampire, he would actually get people's memories. So maybe he wanted Sammy's memories so that he could play that well. Maybe he just wanted Sammy in his army of vampires so Sammy could do it. It's a little unclear, right? I think if they would have made the vampire out to seem like he has been looking for like 1,000 years for someone with this ability, and then he finally found it with Sammy, and like, you know, brought that in a more organic way, I think that would have been more interesting, just as far as not even more interesting, just more informational. I think that would have helped us to understand why Sammy is so important. Kind of just told us, this is why I want Sammy. But okay, well, I guess I'm glad I have a motivation, right? Now we have a reason as to why Sammy is important to the story. It did feel like Sammy should have almost been like more the main character, kind of like he was equal to Smoke and Stack. So I guess in a sense, as far as an individual character, he was maybe more important. But for the most part, I think that's where the crux of the movie kind of fell for me, was the vampire's motivation, fleshing that out more, making him just a stronger presence. Because I just felt like he would say some things here and there, and then would kind of like leave. But he was a little bit like antagonizing, but wasn't really around too much. Like he was around, but wasn't doing a ton. I think other people as vampires had more going on, and a lot of stuff was seen in the trailers. Like Mary, like, oh, we're gonna kill every last one of y'all. I feel like a lot of those like quotes and things, like I saw that in the trailer, and I was hoping for like more stuff from the movie that the trailer didn't show. And that was really all we got from Mary as a vampire. But I'll say the most interesting thing we got. Same with Stack. Being in that room was the most interesting thing that we got from Stack as a vampire, I feel like. Between just a lot of the characters getting like an unceremonious end, or feeling like a lot of them kind of got picked off by the end of the first half, or, you know, partway through the middle, it seemed like any sort of character development a lot of them had or was built up just didn't get any payoff for. The very last thing that I did not care for so much in the movie, not even did not care for so much, but another thing that I felt like was set up but didn't get delivered on was Sammy's like music. Annie's character, Smoke's love interest, made it seem as though, was it her? Somebody in the movie made it seem as though music is this powerful thing that can kind of cure anything, could like dispel evil. I'm paraphrasing a lot, but the movie built it up to make me think that Sammy was going to maybe free the vampires from the grasp, grippy. If you know that song, just throw a grippy in the comments. Shout out J. Cole. No, but like, I thought that his song was going to release the vampires from the grasp of the main vampire. They built it up to make it seem as though his music could do that. That it had that ability, that if the music is strong enough, it could, you know, free effectively the vampires. I guess they didn't say that specifically, but they did build up the power of the music to seem like it had properties of healing and release and all that sort of stuff, right? To like release like souls and all that. They put such an emphasis on that, and then ultimately that never really came into fruition. I thought that he's going to play his guitar and he's going to free like the rest of the vampires, and then maybe like at the end of the movie and the beginning, you see that his guitar's broken. I thought he was going to free the rest of the vampires, and then the main guy was going to try to kill him, and then he's going to stab him through the heart with his now broken guitar, because maybe like, you know, it gets broken when the main vampire attacks him, something like that. That didn't happen. He basically just hit the vampire upside the head with his guitar. I guess it had some silver in it, so it was burning him. And right before the vampire could kill him, Smoke comes from behind him and hits him with the stick. He puts a stake through his heart. So straight up normal vampire killing, right? I felt like the music of this movie and how it's built up did not get a good payoff. It had a great setup. I think even the middle, during the music scene in the juke joint, if you've seen the movie, you know, but Sammy's playing his guitar, and he's summoning the spirits of the past and the future, his ancestors, and you know, black ancestors, Asian ancestors, like the Chows, right, and also descendants, right. I thought that was really cool. They demonstrated the power of his music, and then they didn't in the possibly the most crucial moment of the story, right? At the end of the day, I'm glad he survived. And well, Smoke survived the night, but he ended up dying. Smoke was probably the only character along with Sammy who I feel like had a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? And I guess that's good because they're probably the most important characters, right? I feel like they had a meaningful beginning of what they're trying to leave behind, what they were trying to do. a meaningful middle, because you find out that Smoke and Annie had a child, but she died possibly like in childbirth or something. It was very sad. Like it kind of crushed me, honestly. But you find that out, and Annie, I might argue that Annie had a good ending. I think I maybe want more of her, like, middle part of her character's story. But as she died, she was like, oh, I'm gonna go basically see our daughter. Smoke at the end basically gets into a shootout with all these clan members, right? The people that sold him the property in the first place. He gets hit by a bullet, and he sees his wife on the other side, and he hears the cries of his daughter on the other side, and he just willingly kind of goes, right? I thought that was a good end for for Smoke. There I go, confusing the brothers again. That being said, Sammy gets an ending. He grows old, and as you're watching the credits of the movie, he's playing his guitar, and he has a long life. There's a very final scene where he's in a bar, and two people are waiting outside, and the bouncer's like, hey, can I like let these people in? Like, I know like the building's closed. He's like, yeah, you can let them in. Guess who needs to be invited in? Vampires. I thought that was kind of clever, because I wasn't actually thinking about that anymore. I just assumed all the vampires died, I guess. But then we hear Annie's words like, oh, you had to kill them. Like, just because you kill the leader doesn't mean you kill the other ones. But I just assumed because you see like Cornbread and some of the other vampires that were part of the main cast burn up and die, I assumed that all the other main cast vampires were dead too. Until you see Stack and Mary come in looking like modern people, very fly. And they basically say like, hey, like, how's it been going? I'm like, are they gonna like kind of kill him just in here like after a long time? And they don't. They give him his old guitar back, or at least a very close replica of it. And basically they say, hey, can you play like the old blues? Like, not that electric shit. Like, I'm not really down with that. And he plays it, and it's really good. And they find out like, oh, like Smoke made me promise not to like attack you, to let you have a long life. And that's not super clear why he agreed, because he would have agreed, it seems, before Smoke killed the lead vampire. So I don't know if he was like freed of the lead vampire's influence and then agreed. It doesn't seem like these vampires really had any reason to like express any sort of humanity while the leader was still alive, which he was at the time that they would have made that promise. I feel like the only other thing I could think of was maybe their twin bond maybe came through. I don't know. I definitely want to rewatch the movie to see if there's some details I missed, because Smoke fights Stack and then goes out to kill the main vampire, right? So that conversation would have happened when he was fighting Stack. So I'm not exactly sure when that happened. I'm so glad it happened, because I think that gave Smoke, there I go again, Stack and Mary more of an ending. So they're like, just immortal, living through the ages. One part that I liked, though, was that Sammy asked him, was that the best day of your life before the sun went down? And yes, Stack was like, yeah, it was. Now, like, I haven't seen the sun like since then, like a sunrise or anything, right? So they're still like, immortal. At least they have each other, Stack and Mary. But so it was interesting. I think I enjoyed the endings. They kind of had like 3 endings, it felt like. And I really enjoyed all of them. I think that brought it back up for me, because Stack and Mary kind of got a bit of an ending. One of the tensions of their relationship was like why Stack basically just left her. And he was like, I wouldn't be able to protect you. So I'm glad that they got to get together kind of for eternity in a way. So I feel like they got more of an end, but I think they still kind of lacked a middle for me. But yeah, with that said, guys, I know I kind of like, went at length about some of the things I didn't like. I do again want to clarify. I just want to talk about those things. I feel like nobody else has really talked about them. Let me know if you guys agree or disagree with that. If you feel like some characters just didn't get like a good ending for how much they were built up in the first half of the movie, or some characters feel like they kind of got like a beginning and an end, but they didn't really get like a meaningful, like, I don't know, character arc or just like progression. That was just one of those things that I kind of noticed, and that can be hard when you have like a lot of characters that you build up. I think if maybe they would just let a few more people survive, that probably would have solved it, right? effectively letting only Sammy survive, I felt like was kind of a slight misstep. I know Stack and Mary also kind of survived, but as vampires, right? But if you want to count them, then 3 people, but 2 of them were kind of hoed. They can't see the sun. They're vampires, right? But yeah, the main vampires' motivations I think could have been built up more. Just the lack of payoff with like the power of the music. I think that those are the 3 things that kind of stood out to me as I watched the movie. Although I do feel like I was actively trying to figure out the movie as I was watching it. I think if I rewatch it, watch the pacing of everything, I might enjoy it more. That being said, guys, if I had to give this movie a rating out of 10, just based on my impressions of it the first time, I'd probably still give it like a soft like 9 out of 10, right? Like it was still wonderfully done on so many levels. I can't understate like the performances, the music, the videography, the lighting, just even like just some of the scenes that set up like Cornbread when he wanted his money, like that, like so many of those scenes were super well done. This movie was really fantastic, guys. I hope that if you saw it, that you enjoyed it. But let me know in the comments below, guys, what you loved about the movie. And let me know if you agree with some of my, critiques of it. But with that, guys, I'll see y'all in the next video. But until then, peace and take care.